Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Mystery Channel. Tonight, we'll be exploring the strange and fascinating mystery of telepathy. For as long as people have wondered about the mind, there have been stories that seem to defy all logical explanation. Some people call it coincidence. Others believe it may point to a hidden ability that has never fully disappeared. Telepathy sits in a curious place between research, rumor, and personal experience. It appears in old investigations, private family stories, secret experiments, and accounts that still trouble scientists. The question is not only whether minds can connect, it is why so many people feel, at least once, that another thought has reached them from somewhere else. In this journey, we will move through claims that challenge ordinary belief. We will consider what science has tested, what skeptics question, and what believers think may be waiting beyond the edges of accepted knowledge. If you enjoy these curious journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders relax. Notice your eyes grow heavy. And as the day begins to gently fade away, join me as we explore the mystery of telepathy together. Let's begin. Telepathy suggests the mind may reach farther than the body. That idea changes the whole shape of what a human being might be. If thoughts are only private electrical events inside the skull, then the boundary of the self is simple. It ends at the skin. But telepathy asks us to consider a stranger possibility. What if attention is not completely trapped inside the brain? What if emotion, memory, or intention can sometimes move through a channel we have not learned to measure? People often describe these moments as sudden and ordinary at the same time. A name comes to mind, and then the person appears. A warning feeling arrives before any news can explain it. A loved one seems present without being nearby. Skeptics see pattern seeking and chance. Believers see evidence of a forgotten human faculty. The mystery is powerful because it touches something intimate. It suggests that separation may not be as complete as it feels. Some twins report knowing each other's pain from miles away. Stories about twins have always carried a strange charge, because their bond begins before language. Across many families, there are accounts of one twin feeling sudden distress when the other is injured, frightened, or emotionally shaken. The details often sound too direct to dismiss easily. A person wakes with a sharp feeling at the same time their twin is in trouble. Another becomes overwhelmed by anxiety for no clear reason, then later learns something happened far away. Conventional explanations point to closeness, shared habits, and the way twins may anticipate each other after years of living in sync. Yet the most unsettling reports involve separation, silence, and timing that feels almost exact. Some people believe twins may retain a deeper form of connection from the womb. Others think the stories grow stronger in memory. Either way, twin telepathy remains one of the most familiar gateways into the entire mystery. Military researchers once tested whether thoughts could cross locked rooms. The idea sounds like something from a secret file, yet it fits a real historical fear. If information could pass silently from one mind to another, then no wall, code, or border would be entirely safe. During periods of intense rivalry, unusual possibilities sometimes received serious attention simply because the consequences were too great to ignore. Experiments with isolated subjects tried to answer a basic question. Could one person receive an image, word, or impression without normal contact? The setup often involved sealed spaces, controlled timing, and attempts to remove ordinary clues. Critics argued that the results were inconsistent and too vulnerable to interpretation. Supporters wondered why such work was funded at all if it had no promise. The fascination is not just whether the tests succeeded. It is the fact that powerful institutions once considered the mind itself a possible communication system, and perhaps even a hidden battlefield. Dream telepathy experiments hinted that sleep might open hidden channels. Sleep has long seemed like the perfect doorway for strange communication, because the mind relaxes its usual defenses there. In several famous experiments, one person tried to send an image, while another slept in a separate room. The dreamer would later describe what appeared in their sleep, and researchers compared the account with the target image. Some matches were vague. Others were close enough to keep the debate alive for decades. The appeal is easy to understand. Dreams already feel like messages from somewhere deeper than ordinary thought. They mix memory with emotion, and they often arrive with a force that waking ideas do not have. Skeptics say dream reports are flexible and easy to fit after the fact. Believers argue that dreaming may reduce mental noise, allowing faint impressions to come through. The puzzle remains inviting because sleep is both common and mysterious, a nightly experiment no one fully understands. Animals sometimes appear to sense messages their owners never speak. Anyone who has lived closely with an animal knows how strange their awareness can seem. A dog may rise before a car is heard. A cat may hide before a visit is announced. A horse may respond to a rider's intention before the reins move. Many such moments can be explained by senses sharper than our own. Animals notice posture, smell, routine, and sounds too faint for people to catch. But some accounts are harder to place neatly inside that explanation. Owners describe pets reacting when plans change at a distance, or showing excitement before anyone could have signaled what was coming. Some researchers have treated these cases as clues that emotional bonds may carry information in ways we do not yet understand. The more cautious view says animals are master readers of tiny cues. Still, the mystery remains because their responses often feel less like training and more like knowing. Ancient cultures treated mind reading as a sacred human possibility. Long before laboratories tried to test telepathy, many societies placed unusual forms of knowing inside spiritual life. A healer might sense an illness without being told. A seer might receive the thought of a visitor before they spoke. A teacher might be believed to understand a student's mind through deep discipline. These claims were not always treated as entertainment. They could be woven into ideas about wisdom, duty, and contact with unseen realms. Modern readers may separate psychic ability from religion, but older worldviews often did not draw that boundary so firmly. To them, the mind could be porous, and certain people might learn to listen beyond ordinary speech. Skeptics see these traditions as social authority wrapped in mystery. Some people see preserved memory of abilities that were once taken seriously. The enduring question is whether these stories describe belief alone, or whether belief grew around experiences that felt impossible to ignore. Cold War laboratories quietly explored thought transfer as a strategic advantage. The Cold War was a time when even unlikely ideas could become matters of national concern. If one side believed the other might be studying psychic communication, ignoring the subject could feel dangerous. This atmosphere helped unusual research move from the margins into controlled rooms with official interest. The dream was simple and astonishing. A trained mind might send information without a radio, a wire, or any detectable signal. Even a small success could have seemed valuable in a world obsessed with secrecy. Much of the work remained controversial, and later assessments disagreed about what had been demonstrated. Critics saw weak evidence shaped by expectation. Supporters pointed to moments when results appeared better than chance. The mystery is sharpened by the setting. When governments peer into subjects that sound impossible, it makes people wonder whether they found nothing, found confusion, or found something too strange to discuss openly. Sudden phone calls often follow the feeling that someone was thinking of us. This is the everyday telepathy story almost everyone understands. A person comes to mind with no obvious reason, and then the phone rings. Sometimes it is a message instead. Sometimes the timing is so close that it feels less like coincidence and more like contact. Skeptics remind us that we think about many people during a week and only remember the moments that match. That explanation is sensible, yet it does not remove the emotional force of the experience. The event feels personal because the thought arrives first. It seems to prepare the mind for the connection before any ordinary signal appears. Some people believe strong relationships create mental habits that make these moments more likely. Others suspect there may be a subtle bond that becomes active when one person reaches out. The mystery survives because it does not belong only to experts. It lives in kitchens, bedrooms, offices, and pockets. Children sometimes describe private thoughts before adults say them aloud. Children can make telepathy feel especially unsettling because they often speak without strategy. A child may answer a question that was never asked. They may mention a worry an adult has kept hidden. They may refer to a memory that no one in the room has discussed. Many cases likely come from careful observation. Children notice tone, silence, facial tension, and small changes in routine more than adults realize. They may also guess boldly, then remember the guesses that succeed. But certain stories leave parents with a harder feeling. The child seems to respond not to behavior, but to an inner sentence. Some families treat these moments as signs that young minds are more open before doubt teaches them to close down. Psychologists may frame them as sensitivity rather than psychic contact. Either way, the mystery deepens because childhood speech can feel direct, unfiltered, and strangely close to whatever adults try to hide. The greatest telepathy mystery is why it feels strangely familiar. Telepathy does not feel like a completely foreign idea to most people. Even those who reject it often understand its emotional logic immediately. We know what it is like to sense a mood before anyone explains it. We know how a close friend can seem to answer an unspoken thought. We know the odd feeling of being remembered by someone at the same moment we remember them. None of that proves mind-to-mind contact, but it explains why the subject refuses to disappear. It seems to sit beside ordinary life, just beyond proof. Some people think this familiarity comes from human social intelligence. We are built to read each other quickly. Others believe it hints at an ability that appears briefly, then vanishes when inspected too closely. The strangest part may be this. Telepathy sounds impossible in theory, yet in experience it often feels like something we have nearly known all along. J.B. Rhine made telepathy famous with cards and probability. At Duke University, a psychologist named J.B. Rhine helped turn psychic research into something that looked more like a formal test. His best-known method used special cards marked with simple symbols. A sender or deck would be separated from the person guessing, and the results were compared against what chance should allow. The appeal was clear. Instead of relying only on dramatic stories, Ryan tried to count hits and misses. His work drew enormous public attention because it suggested that mysterious mental abilities might be studied with numbers rather than rumor. Critics later challenged the methods, the controls, and the meaning of the statistics. Supporters argued that his experiments opened a door serious science had been too quick to close. What makes Rhine fascinating is not only the cards themselves. It is the ambition behind them. He tried to place the impossible on a table and ask whether chance could really explain it. The Ganzfeld experiments became one of parapsychology's most debated claims. The Ganzfeld method was designed around a bold suspicion. Perhaps telepathic impressions are normally drowned out by ordinary sensation. To reduce that noise, a receiver would enter a relaxed state with mild sensory uniformity, often hearing steady sound and seeing a soft field of light. Meanwhile, a sender focused on a target image or scene elsewhere. Later, the receiver judged which possible target best matched their impressions. Supporters reported results that seemed above chance across some studies, and they argued that the setup gave telepathy a fairer environment. Critics questioned replication, statistical choices, and the risk of subtle leakage. The debate became intense because both sides saw the issue as important. For believers, Ganzfeld results hinted that the mind may communicate best when the outer world becomes less demanding. For skeptics, the controversy showed how easily hope can shape interpretation. The mystery remains one of the central battlegrounds in modern psychic research. Remote viewing blurred the line between telepathy and psychic perception. Remote viewing began with a startling proposal. A person might describe a distant location, object, or event without being there. At first glance, this seems different from telepathy, because the target is not always another person's thought. Yet the boundary quickly becomes strange. If one mind selects the target, records it, or focuses attention on it, then is the viewer sensing the place itself, or reading the intention around it? This question made remote viewing one of the most slippery subjects in the psychic world. Some sessions produced descriptions that supporters found difficult to explain. Other results were vague, symbolic, or clearly wrong. Critics argued that judging the matches could become too generous. Enthusiasts wondered whether consciousness might access information through routes that do not fit familiar categories. The fascination comes from that blurred edge. It suggests that telepathy may be only one piece of a larger mystery about perception itself. Some mediums claimed messages arrived as thoughts rather than voices. Mediumship is often imagined as hearing spirits speak, but many accounts describe something subtler. The information appears as a sudden idea, a mental picture, or a sentence that feels placed rather than invented. This matters because it makes the experience difficult to separate from telepathy. If a medium gives accurate personal details, are they receiving them from a departed presence, reading the sitter's mind, or drawing from some other reservoir of memory? This question divided researchers and believers for generations. Some argued that telepathy between the living could explain the strongest readings without requiring survival after death. Others felt that certain messages seemed to carry identity, emotion, and context beyond what any sitar knew. Skeptics pointed to cold reading, chance, and the power of grief. Yet the thought-based nature of many readings keeps the mystery alive. It places mediumship at a crossroads where spirit communication and mind-to-mind contact become difficult to untangle. Mark Twain believed strange mental links connected him to distant people. Mark Twain was not just a humorist with a sharp eye for human nature. He also took an interest in experiences that seemed to defy ordinary explanation. He wrote about mental impressions, unusual coincidences, and the possibility that thoughts might travel between people. What makes his involvement compelling is his practical intelligence. He was not a figure people could easily dismiss as naive. When a skeptical and observant writer admits that certain events troubled him, the subject gains a different kind of weight. Twain reportedly noticed moments when letters, ideas, or intentions seemed to cross paths before normal communication occurred. A strict skeptic might call these memorable coincidences selected from a busy life. A more open listener might wonder whether creative minds are unusually sensitive to hidden currents of thought. His interest reminds us that telepathy has not only attracted mystics, it has also unsettled some of the most worldly observers of human behavior. Sigmund Freud wondered whether thought transfer deserved serious investigation. Freud is remembered for dreams, hidden wishes, and the unconscious mind. Yet he also wrestled with reports that suggested thoughts might pass between people in ways psychology could not easily explain. His interest was cautious and complicated. He did not simply embrace every claim, but he did not dismiss the subject as worthless either. That is what makes his position so intriguing. A thinker who spent his life exploring hidden mental processes saw enough mystery to consider whether thought transfer belonged near the edge of serious inquiry. In psychoanalysis, patients sometimes seemed to produce material that echoed the analyst's private concerns or unspoken ideas. Coincidence, suggestion, and emotional sensitivity could explain many cases. Still, Freud wondered whether something more direct might occasionally occur. The question fits his wider world. If the mind contains depths we barely understand, then perhaps its boundaries may also be less obvious than everyday life suggests. Carl Jung connected telepathy to meaningful coincidences and shared symbols. Jung approached strange mental events through a different doorway. He was fascinated by patterns that seemed meaningful even when no normal cause could be found. This led him toward the idea of synchronicity, where an inner event and an outer event appear connected by meaning rather than mechanics. Telepathy fit naturally into that landscape. A thought, dream, or symbol might arise in one mind, while a related event unfolds elsewhere. Jung did not treat every coincidence as proof of psychic contact, but he took seriously the feeling that human experience sometimes arranges itself around hidden patterns. His work also included the collective unconscious, a theory suggesting that certain symbols belong to deep layers shared across humanity. Skeptics see this as metaphor and interpretation rather than evidence. Yet Jung's vision remains magnetic because it makes telepathy part of a larger question. What if minds do not only communicate, but participate in a shared field of meaning? Upton Sinclair tested mental pictures with his wife in private. Upton Sinclair is best known as a writer and reformer, but one of his most unusual projects involved experiments at home. His wife, Mary Craig Sinclair, would attempt to reproduce drawings or images that he or others had selected. The results were published with examples that many readers found striking. Simple shapes, figures, and scenes sometimes appeared to match the target closely enough to raise eyebrows. Because the work happened in a domestic setting, it had an intimate quality that laboratory tests often lack. It seemed like an attempt to ask a huge question across a kitchen table. Critics could point to weaknesses in control, possible cueing, and the danger of choosing the best examples. Supporters saw honest curiosity and the pattern too interesting to ignore. The story endures because it makes telepathy feel close to ordinary life. Not a stage act, not a legend, but two people testing whether imagination can be shared. Nikola Tesla imagined communication beyond ordinary speech and wires. Tesla's name often gathers extraordinary claims, partly because his real inventions already seemed ahead of their time. He transformed the modern electrical world, and he thought deeply about invisible transmission. Although many telepathy stories attached to him later should be treated carefully, his broader vision makes the association understandable. Tesla lived in an age when wireless communication was turning impossibility into fact. Voices and signals could cross distance through forces no one could see. For people watching that revolution unfold, the next question almost asked itself. If machines could send messages invisibly, might the human nervous system do something remotely similar? Tesla sometimes speculated about the brain in electrical terms, which gave later thinkers plenty of room to imagine hidden mental broadcasting. The verified science and the legend are not the same. Yet together they reveal why telepathy became so attractive in the electrical age, when the unseen suddenly proved powerful. The Society for Psychical Research gathered hundreds of telepathy cases. In the late 19th century, a group of investigators set out to examine strange experiences without treating them only as superstition. Their project was ambitious. They collected testimonies, interviewed witnesses, compared accounts, and tried to sort stronger cases from weaker ones. Telepathy became one of their central interests because it offered a possible explanation for visions, warnings, and impressions that seemed linked to distant people. What makes their work important is the scale of it. Instead of one dramatic tale, they built archives of human experience. Many reports were messy, emotional, or impossible to verify completely. Some were likely shaped by memory and expectation. Yet others were detailed enough to keep researchers engaged. The Society's work helped define the questions that still surround telepathy today. How much testimony is enough? How close must the timing be? When does coincidence stop feeling like a satisfying answer and start feeling like an escape? Silent, staring experiments tested whether attention can be felt from behind. Most people know the small shock of turning around because it feels like someone is watching. It is easy to laugh off until it happens in an empty corridor, a classroom, or a train carriage where no sound explains the impulse. Researchers have tried to test this by placing one person behind another and asking them to stare during selected moments. The person in front then guesses when the gaze is active. Some trials have appeared to show results above chance, while critics argue that tiny sounds, expectations, or uneven methods may explain the outcome. Still, the idea keeps its grip because it feels so familiar. A look is not supposed to have weight. It should not press against the back of the neck. Yet countless people describe attention as something almost physical. The mystery asks whether the human mind only receives signals through senses, or whether focused awareness can be felt directly. Some mothers describe sensing danger before their children call home. A parent's alarm can begin before any ordinary evidence arrives. There are stories of mothers waking suddenly, stopping mid-task, or feeling a rush of dread at the same time a child faces trouble elsewhere. Many explanations are possible. Parents know patterns, and they may notice small changes in timing, mood, or silence. They also worry often, which means some fears will match events by chance. Yet the strongest accounts are hard for families to forget, because the feeling comes with unusual force. It is not vague concern. It feels like a command to pay attention. Some people believe the bond between parent and child may carry a kind of emotional signal, especially when danger is involved. Others think memory makes the timing sharper later. Either way, these stories remain powerful because they turn love into a possible channel of information. And they suggest that care itself may be more mysterious than we imagine. Lovers often report shared thoughts during moments of emotional intensity. Romantic connection can make ordinary communication feel almost unnecessary. Two people reach for the same sentence, choose the same place, or feel the same shift in mood before either has explained it. In calm moments, this can be dismissed as familiarity. During intense moments, it seems harder to reduce. A partner may sense a decision before hearing it. Another may know that something has changed in the relationship from a distance. The feeling is often described as direct, almost like receiving a private signal from the other person. Psychology offers part of the answer. Close partners learn each other's rhythms, fears, habits, and silences. But some stories arrive with timing that makes the explanation feel incomplete. Believers wonder whether powerful emotion may amplify whatever hidden connection exists between minds. Skeptics see deep attention at work. The fascination remains because love already makes people feel joined, and telepathy gives that feeling a startling possibility. Identical twins have inspired some of the strangest telepathy stories. The public imagination returns to identical twins because their similarities can seem almost designed to disturb our confidence in coincidence. They may speak in matching phrases, make the same choices, or respond to each other with uncanny timing. When twins are raised together, ordinary explanations are strong. They share a home, a history, and countless subtle cues. The stranger cases involve twins who spend long periods apart, yet still report matching moods, decisions, or sudden sensations. Some people claim that identical genetics may create a rare mental resonance, as if the nervous systems are tuned in a similar way. Mainstream science is cautious, and it rightly points to memory, selective reporting, and the human love of patterns. Even so, twin stories remain hard to ignore because they carry a built-in question. If two bodies begin from the same divided cell, might their minds stay linked in ways we have not properly understood? Crisis apparitions sometimes arrive when someone distant is in trouble. A crisis apparition is one of the most unsettling forms of reported telepathy because it often appears at the moment of emergency. A person sees, hears, or strongly senses someone far away, then later learned that the person was undergoing a serious event at roughly the same time. Some accounts come as waking visions. Others are impressions that feel like a presence in the room. Spiritual explanations suggest the distant person somehow reaches out during extreme need. Telepathic explanations say the receiver's mind may translate a distress signal into a familiar form. Skeptics point to grief, coincidence, and the way unusual experiences are remembered after important news. Yet the stories continue because they follow a pattern that appears across eras and cultures. The person perceived is often someone emotionally close. The timing feels meaningful. The message is rarely detailed, but it leaves behind a haunting suggestion that urgent human feeling may travel farther than speech. Hospital nurses have reported patients knowing visitors were approaching. Hospitals create a strange setting for stories about unseen awareness. Patients may be tired, medicated, anxious, or close to sleep, yet staff sometimes report moments that feel difficult to place. A patient says a relative is coming just before the visitor arrives. Another becomes alert shortly before a familiar person reaches the ward. Ordinary clues can explain many cases. Footsteps, routines, voices in corridors, and staff behavior all give information. But nurses have sometimes described incidents where the patient had no obvious way to know. These stories matter because they are not usually told as dramatic performances. They come from busy people who notice patterns while doing practical work. Some people believe illness can make the mind more sensitive because the normal filters are weakened. Others think patients become highly tuned to the rhythms around them. The mystery is tender rather than flashy. It asks whether vulnerability can sometimes sharpen perception beyond ordinary boundaries. Sailors once told stories of warnings received across impossible distances. Life at sea has always encouraged unusual beliefs, partly because distance changes everything. A ship could vanish beyond contact, and families might wait weeks for news. In that silence, stories grew about sudden warnings, dreams, or mental impressions that seemed connected to danger offshore. A wife might feel certain that something was wrong. A captain might change course after a strong inner alarm. A sailor might dream of home at the same time illness or disaster occurred there. Modern readers can see how isolation, fear, and weather made such stories powerful. Yet the ocean also gives the mystery a special shape. When normal communication is absent, any correct impression feels magnified. Some people thought the sea itself made minds more receptive by removing daily noise. Others believed love could cross water more easily than ships. These tales remind us that before instant messages, telepathy was not only a wonder. It was sometimes imagined as hope. Wartime families sometimes sensed bad news before official letters arrived. War created some of the most painful and carefully remembered telepathy accounts. Families waiting at home lived with long gaps between events and information. In that uncertainty, many reported sudden dreams, impressions, or heavy feelings that later seemed to match news from the front. A mother might know the day before a telegram. A sibling might wake with a clear conviction that something had changed. Skeptics note that fear was constant during wartime, so some premonitions would inevitably match real events. That is a fair caution. But families often preserved these stories because the timing felt too sharp and the emotion too unusual. Some people believe extreme danger sends a mental shock toward those most closely bonded to the person in peril. Others think the mind searches for meaning when waiting becomes unbearable. The mystery holds both possibilities at once. It shows how telepathy claims often appear where love, distance, and silence create unbearable pressure. Some pet owners believe animals understand thoughts before commands. A dog turns toward the door before anyone says the word walk. A cat appears when a person merely thinks about feeding time. A horse shifts before the rider gives a visible cue. These moments can feel like small domestic miracles. Animal trainers often explain them through remarkable sensitivity. Pets notice eye movement, breathing, tension, and routine with skill that humans underestimate. They may respond to tiny preparations we do not recognize in ourselves. Still, many owners insist that certain reactions happen before any action begins. The animal seems to respond to intention itself. Some people imagine a simple emotional telepathy between species, especially after years of trust. Others say animals are not reading minds. They are reading bodies with a precision that looks supernatural. The mystery stays alive because either answer is astonishing. If animals sense thoughts, the world is stranger. If they only notice hidden cues, they know us better than we know ourselves. Horses in old performance acts appeared to read human intention. Public exhibitions once thrilled audiences with animals that seemed able to answer questions, count, spell, or identify hidden objects. Horses were especially impressive because their size made the performance feel grand and impossible. The animal would tap a hoof, nod, or move toward the correct choice, while spectators wondered whether it possessed human-like understanding. In some cases, investigation revealed something more subtle than fraud. The animal was responding to tiny changes in posture, breath, and expectation from the handler or crowd. That discovery became famous because it showed how unconscious signaling can look exactly like mind reading. Yet the lesson does not make the story dull. It makes it deeper. The horse was still perceiving signals beyond ordinary human awareness. Some people take this as a warning against easy belief. Others see it as proof that communication can exist below speech in powerful ways. Either way, these acts became a doorway into hidden influence. Clever hands showed how easily hidden cues can mimic telepathy. The case of Clever Hans is essential because it explains how a mystery can be real and misleading at the same time. This horse appeared to solve arithmetic problems by tapping his hoof. Crowds were amazed, and the idea of animal intelligence seemed to leap forward. Then careful testing revealed that Hans was not doing mathematics. He was reading the unconscious reactions of people around him. When the correct number approached, observers subtly changed their posture or expression, and the horse stopped tapping. This discovery did not expose a simple trick. It revealed a hidden conversation between species. The human body was speaking without permission, and the animal was listening with extraordinary care. For telepathy, the lesson is powerful. Some mind reading may actually be cue reading. But the case also raises a stranger thought. If unnoticed signals can guide behavior so precisely, then ordinary communication is surrounded by invisible layers we barely control. Yet some animal cases seem harder to explain away completely. After every caution about hidden cues, certain animal stories still trouble the edges of explanation. The most intriguing reports involve pets reacting when the usual signals appear absent. A dog waits at the window at an unexpected time. A cat becomes agitated before a distant owner starts the journey home. A bird speaks a word connected to something happening outside the room. Skeptics can offer possibilities. There may be patterns the owner missed, sounds from outside, or memories shaped by later surprise. But the emotional force of these cases remains strong because they often happen in ordinary homes without any audience to impress. Some people think animals may be sensitive to intention because their survival depends on reading other beings quickly. Others wonder whether the human-animal bond creates its own channel, built from trust and repetition. The question is not settled. It lingers because animals already live closer to the unseen parts of perception than we do. Rupert Sheldrake studied dogs that seemed to know owners were returning. One of the best-known modern claims about animal telepathy involves dogs that appear to anticipate a person's return. In these cases, the owner leaves at irregular times and travels back without a fixed schedule. The dog then goes to a window, door, or waiting place before normal cues should be available. The most famous examples became controversial because they seemed both simple and deeply strange. Supporters believed the behavior suggested a bond that could not be reduced to routine. Critics looked for overlooked signals, patterns in travel, and selective interpretation of the results. What makes the idea so compelling is its everyday nature. It does not require a grand laboratory or a supernatural setting. It asks whether a familiar animal might sense a decision made miles away. The debate continues because the claim sits right on the border between affection and evidence. Many owners already feel watched over by their pets in exactly this way. Parrots have reportedly answered thoughts before hearing spoken questions. Parrots occupy a fascinating place in telepathy stories because they can speak back. That makes the mystery more dramatic than a bark, a glance, or a movement toward a door. Some owners have claimed that their birds responded to mental images, private intentions, or questions that had not been spoken aloud. A parrot might name an object the person was imagining or react to a thought before the words entered the room. Skeptics argue that parrots are brilliant pattern learners. They notice context, tone, timing, and repeated situations. They can also surprise people by combining learned words in ways that feel meaningful. Yet the strongest stories are memorable because the response seems too specific for chance. Some people believe these birds may tune into human attention with unusual clarity. Others see a lesson in animal intelligence rather than psychic power. The mystery is sharpened by the voice itself, because when a bird answers, the impossible seems to answer aloud. Dolphins raise strange questions about intelligence and mind-to-mind contact. Dolphins have long fascinated researchers because their social lives seem rich, fast, and difficult for humans to decode. They use sound with extraordinary precision, coordinate movement in groups, and appear to recognize individuals across time. None of this proves telepathy, but it naturally invites speculation. When animals cooperate underwater with such speed, it can look as if information is moving through the group faster than ordinary signaling. Science points to clicks, whistles, body motion, and learning. Still, some people wonder whether highly intelligent creatures may use forms of awareness humans have not named. The ocean adds to the puzzle because sound behaves differently there, and communication can travel in ways that feel almost magical from a human point of view. Fringe thinkers imagine dolphins as keepers of an older mental language. A cautious view says their known abilities are already astonishing. Either way, they remind us that human communication may not be the only marvel worth studying. Elephants may sense distant distress through signals humans barely understand. Elephants challenge the telepathy question because their communication already extends beyond easy human perception. They can produce low-frequency sounds that travel long distances, and they respond to vibrations through the ground. To an observer who cannot detect those signals, their behavior might look like mind reading. A herd may react before a distant event becomes visible. Individuals may gather, become alert, or move with a purpose that seems mysterious. Science offers a powerful explanation through sound, touch, memory, and social intelligence. Yet the result still feels profound. The animals are sharing information through a hidden layer of the environment. Some people take this as a model for how human telepathy might one day be understood. Perhaps the signal is not supernatural. Perhaps it is simply overlooked. Elephants show that nature can contain communication systems that remain invisible until we learn how to listen. The mystery is whether the human mind has any comparable hidden channel. Indigenous traditions often describe thought sharing as a natural skill. In many traditional cultures, the boundary between spoken knowledge and silent knowing has been understood differently from the modern Western view. Accounts describe hunters sensing where companions are, healers knowing what a person needs, or elders understanding messages without direct speech. These stories are sometimes presented not as miracles, but as skills developed through attention, relationship, and long practice. It would be wrong to flatten many cultures into one simple claim. Beliefs vary widely, and each tradition deserves respect on its own terms. Still, the pattern is intriguing. Some communities have treated the mind as part of a living network, rather than a sealed private chamber. Skeptics may interpret these accounts as intuition shaped by deep environmental knowledge. Others wonder whether modern life has dulled abilities that once mattered for survival. The mystery becomes less about fantasy and more about forgotten training. What seems paranormal in a city may have seemed practical in another way of life. Tibetan stories include masters who communicate through disciplined inner focus. Tibetan spiritual literature contains accounts of advanced practitioners whose minds appear unusually powerful. Some stories describe teachers knowing a student's question before it is spoken, sending guidance across distance, or appearing inwardly to someone in need. These accounts are embedded in a tradition that takes mental training extremely seriously. Years of meditation are believed to refine attention, emotion, and perception. From one angle, the stories may describe profound intuition. A skilled teacher can read posture, hesitation, and the emotional tone beneath words. From another angle, they suggest that the mind may become less confined when disciplined over a lifetime. Some people believe telepathy is not a random gift, but a capacity that emerges when ordinary distraction falls away. Skeptics see reverence, legend, and teacher devotion shaping the accounts. Yet the idea remains compelling because it frames mind-to-mind contact as something cultivated, not merely accidental. The mystery becomes a question of practice. Shamanic journeys sometimes treat distant knowing as part of healing. In many shamanic traditions, the healer's work involves traveling inward to gain knowledge that ordinary senses cannot provide. The journey may concern an illness, a lost object, a troubled relationship, or a danger affecting the community. To outsiders, this can look like imagination. To participants, it may function as a serious method of diagnosis and restoration. Telepathy enters the picture when the healer appears to know details about another person's state without being told. Some people explain this through ritual sensitivity, careful listening, and cultural expectation. Others believe altered states can open contact between minds or between the healer and a wider field of information. The most interesting part is how practical these experiences can be. The knowledge is not always presented as spectacle. It is used to guide action, comfort fear, or restore balance. Whether psychic, symbolic, or psychological, The shamanic model treats distant knowing as something that can serve a human need. Aboriginal song lines have been linked to memory and shared awareness. Song lines are often discussed as routes of knowledge carried through story, place, and performance. They can guide movement across land while preserving lore, memory, and relationship. Telepathy is not the right word for that system in a simple sense, and it should not be forced onto it carelessly. Yet some outsiders have been struck by the way knowledge can appear distributed across people and landscape, rather than stored in one private mind. A person may know where they are through song. A community may preserve vast information through shared pattern. Some alternative thinkers see this as evidence that consciousness can be woven into place. More cautious observers see a brilliant cultural technology for memory and survival. The fascination for our subject is subtle. It asks whether modern people have made the mind too small by imagining it as isolated. Some older knowledge systems suggest awareness may become stronger when it is shared across generations. Ancient Greek writers described forms of knowing beyond ordinary senses. The Greeks left behind more than myths of gods and heroes. Their philosophical and religious worlds included dreams, omens, prophecy, and strange forms of insight that did not fit ordinary perception. Some thinkers debated whether the soul could receive knowledge apart from the body's senses. Oracles became famous for utterances that seemed to come from beyond normal reasoning. Philosophers also asked whether mind was limited to flesh or connected to a larger order. We should not pretend these ideas were modern telepathy in disguise. They belong to a different intellectual world. Yet they show that the question is very old. People have long suspected that knowledge may arrive by more than sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. Skeptics then, as now, could blame ambiguity and interpretation. Believers saw contact with a deeper reality. The enduring value of these ancient debates is that they remind us how persistent the mystery is. It predates modern machines entirely. Spiritualist circles claim thoughts could travel through unseen currents. During the rise of spiritualism, people gathered in parlors to test whether the invisible world could communicate with the living. Much attention focused on spirits, but thought itself also became part of the fascination. Some participants believed emotions and ideas moved through subtle currents, connecting sitters around a table before any message was spoken. This belief fit the mood of the era. New discoveries in electricity and magnetism had already shown that unseen forces could be real. If wires could carry signals, why not minds? Critics argued that seances depended on suggestion, expectation, and sometimes deception. They were often right to be cautious. Still, these gatherings helped popularize the idea that thoughts might travel through an invisible medium. The atmosphere was domestic rather than academic, which made the mystery feel close and personal. Telepathy was not merely a theory. It became something people tried to experience with friends, candles, and patients. Mesmerism helped prepare the public for ideas about mental influence. Before telepathy became a familiar word, mesmerism stirred the public imagination with claims about invisible influence between people. Practitioners believed that a subtle force could pass from operator to subject, producing trance, healing, or unusual perception. Many claims were exaggerated, and the original theory of animal magnetism did not survive scientific scrutiny in its early form. Yet the performances and experiments revealed something important. People could enter altered states where suggestion, attention, and expectation had powerful effects. Some subjects seemed to know things or respond to commands in ways that amazed observers. This blurred the boundary between psychology and the paranormal. If one mind could influence another without ordinary persuasion, then perhaps thoughts themselves had hidden reach. Later understandings of hypnosis explained much of the phenomenon differently. Even so, Mesmerism helped create the cultural stage on which telepathy could appear plausible. It taught audiences to imagine the human mind as something that could be acted upon. 19th century stage performers turned thought reading into public wonder. The theatre played a major role in making telepathy exciting to ordinary people. Performers appeared to identify hidden objects, reveal private words, or receive answers from assistants across a crowded hall. Some acts used codes, muscle reading, planted information, or clever psychological techniques. The methods could be ingenious. A pause, a cough, or a phrase might carry more meaning than the audience realized. Yet the effect was powerful because it made mind reading feel visible. People were not reading a theory. They were watching a person apparently reach into another person's thoughts. Even when deception was involved, the performances raised an important question. Why did the illusion feel so convincing? The answer points toward human expectations, subtle communication, and our deep fear that the private self might not be private at all. Stage thought reading helped shape the public image of telepathy as thrilling, intimate, and just believable enough to disturb. Private seances often mixed telepathy claims with symbols and suggestion. Behind closed doors, seances created conditions where ordinary thought could become difficult to separate from shared imagination. Participants sat together with strong expectations, personal grief, and intense attention focused on signs. A symbol might appear in a message, and one person would recognize it as meaningful. Another sitter might remember a related detail. Soon, the room could feel connected by a pattern no one had planned. Some investigators suggested that telepathy between living people might explain many seance communications. The medium could be drawing unconsciously from the minds of the sitters rather than receiving messages from spirits. That idea was controversial because it challenged both skeptics and believers. It accepted something strange while offering a different source. Fraud certainly existed in some circles, and emotional vulnerability could shape perception. Yet the best seance stories remain intriguing because they show how information, memory, and longing may circulate through a group until no one is sure where a thought began. Early psychologists struggled to separate imagination from genuine mind contact. When psychology began to form as a modern discipline, unusual mental experiences were not yet pushed entirely outside respectable discussion. Researchers examined dreams, hypnosis, dissociation, hallucination, and reports of thought transfer with overlapping curiosity. The difficulty was clear. A person could sincerely report an impression that later matched a real event, but sincerity alone could not prove the source. Imagination is powerful. Memory changes. Coincidence can wear the mask of meaning. At the same time, dismissing every case risked ignoring something important. Early psychologists stood at a crossroads between wonder and measurement. They wanted the mind to be studied carefully, yet the mind itself kept producing experiences that escaped simple categories. Some became more skeptical as methods tightened. Others remained open to rare anomalies. This struggle still defines the subject. Telepathy forces us to ask not only whether thoughts can travel, but how we can ever test an experience that happens inside awareness. Some trance states appear to strengthen impressions between close companions. Altered states have always been linked to unusual communication because they change how the mind filters experience. In trance, a person may become deeply focused, less distracted, and more responsive to subtle cues. That alone can create remarkable effects. A close companion's voice, breath, or emotional presence may become unusually vivid. But some accounts go further. People describe receiving images, words, or feelings from someone nearby without ordinary speech. In older experiments, trance subjects sometimes appeared to respond to silent intentions from an operator. Hypnosis research later offered many ordinary explanations, including suggestion and expectation. Yet the telepathy question did not vanish. Some people believe trance may quiet the surface mind enough for faint signals to be noticed. Others think it simply reveals how much communication happens without awareness. The mystery is valuable, either way. It suggests that consciousness may have different modes, and that ordinary waking attention might not be the full range of human contact. Hypnosis raised serious questions about influence without direct instruction. Hypnosis unsettles people because it shows that the mind can respond to suggestion in ways that feel almost hidden from the conscious self. A subject may experience a change in sensation, memory, or attention because an idea has been planted with skill. This is not the same as telepathy, but it opened a door in public imagination. If words could alter perception so deeply, could unspoken intention have a smaller but real effect? In some demonstrations, subjects seemed to react before a command was clearly given. In others, they appeared to follow subtle expectations from the hypnotist without realizing it. Scientific caution is essential here. Hypnosis does not make people puppets, and many dramatic claims are exaggerated. Still, it reveals that human beings are more suggestible and responsive than we like to believe. Telepathy becomes interesting in this context because it asks whether influence can occur even when the suggestion is not spoken aloud. Automatic writing sometimes begins with thoughts that feel borrowed. Automatic writing fascinates people because it turns inner experience into visible words. A person places a pen on paper and allows writing to flow without deliberate planning. The result may feel as if it comes from another mind, a hidden part of the self, or something beyond the self entirely. Some writers report phrases they do not remember forming. Others produce names, warnings, or statements that seem unexpected. Psychology offers a strong explanation through unconscious material. The mind can generate language outside focused control, especially in relaxed or ritual settings. Yet that explanation does not remove the mystery for everyone. If the unconscious can speak in a voice that feels foreign, then the self is already stranger than it appears. Some people wonder whether automatic writing sometimes becomes a receiver for other minds, especially when the content concerns someone nearby. The page becomes a testing ground where imagination, memory, and possible telepathy overlap. Ouija board sessions may reveal subconscious teamwork rather than spirits. A planchette moving across letters can feel deeply uncanny because every participant may believe they are not pushing it. The most accepted explanation involves small, unconscious movements. People make tiny motions without realizing it, and the board turns those motions into messages. This does not make the experience meaningless. It may reveal how a group can create words together without any one person feeling responsible. That is where the telepathy question enters. If several minds share expectations, fears, and half-formed ideas, the board can seem to pull information from the room itself. Some people believe spirits use the device. Others think the living participants are unknowingly communicating below the level of speech. The most interesting sessions are not necessarily the most supernatural. They are the ones where hidden knowledge, shared memory, and suggestion blend so smoothly that the source becomes impossible to identify. The board becomes a mirror for the collective mind at the table. Dream diaries contain reports of shared scenes between sleeping friends. A dream diary becomes fascinating when two people compare notes and find the same unusual detail waiting on both pages. It might be a room neither person remembers visiting, a phrase that appeared in both dreams, or a small action that seems too specific to dismiss instantly. Most shared dream claims are difficult to prove because people often discuss dreams after waking, and memory can reshape itself during conversation. Still, careful diaries create a stronger puzzle. When each person records the dream before speaking, the overlap feels harder to explain away. Some people believe sleep lowers the walls between minds and allows private imagery to drift across friendship. Others think close companions build similar emotional material, then dream from the same hidden concerns. The mystery is appealing because dreams already feel like messages from a deeper place. When two sleeping minds appear to meet there, the night itself begins to feel less private. Some couples claim the same dream arrived on the same night. Shared dreaming takes on special force when it happens inside a close relationship. A couple wakes, begins to talk, and discovers that both remember the same setting or event from sleep. Sometimes the details are broad. Other times the match includes a line of dialogue, a strange object, or the same emotional turn. It is possible that similar daily experiences feed both dreams. Partners often absorb the same worries without naming them. Yet many accounts describe dreams that seem unrelated to anything obvious from the day before. That is where the mystery deepens. Some people think affection can create a mental bridge during sleep, allowing one person's dream material to influence the other. Skeptics see coincidence strengthened by selective memory. But for the people involved, the experience can feel intimate and impossible. It suggests that two minds may sometimes wander through the same inner territory without planning to meet. Lucid dreaming experiments have tested signals sent into sleeping minds. Lucid dreaming offers a rare opportunity because the dreamer knows they are asleep while the dream continues. That awareness turns the dream state into something partly controllable and grazes an extraordinary possibility. Could a sleeping person receive a message and respond from within the dream? Experiments have tested communication with dreamers through eye movements, sounds, lights, and simple tasks. Not all of this is telepathy, but it opens the door to stranger questions. If a dreamer can respond to signals from the outside, perhaps dreams are not as sealed away as they seem. Some people imagine future tests where one mind tries to influence another person's lucid dream directly. The cautious view is that ordinary sensory cues already explain the strongest results. Still, lucid dreaming changes the discussion because it proves that consciousness can remain active in sleep. The dreamer is not gone. They are present in a hidden room of the mind. Nightmares sometimes appear before family emergencies and unsettling phone calls. A nightmare becomes harder to forget when real news follows it. Someone dreams of panic, loss, or a loved one calling for help, then wakes to find a message waiting or a situation unfolding. Many such matches can be explained by worry. Families often sense when someone is under strain, and the sleeping mind turns that concern into intense scenes. But the timing of certain accounts gives them staying power. The dream does not simply reflect anxiety. It seems to arrive before the reason is known. Some people believe nightmares can serve as alarm signals when an emotional bond is disturbed. Others think the brain is always making predictions, and now and then one prediction lands close to reality. The strange part is how physical these dreams can feel. The dreamer wakes shaken, as if a warning has already passed through them. Whether psychic or psychological, these experiences make sleep feel alert to distant trouble. Sleep paralysis can feel like a mind has entered the room. During sleep paralysis, a person wakes unable to move, often sensing a presence nearby. The experience can be terrifying, but it also helps explain why many cultures have stories of night visitors and invisible intruders. Science describes the state as a collision between dreaming and waking. The body remains in sleep paralysis while awareness returns too early. Yet the mind may still project dream material into the room. For telepathy, this creates a delicate puzzle. Some people feel the presence is not only imagined. It seems intelligent, focused, and aware of them. A few even report receiving thoughts or commands without hearing a voice. The careful explanation is that the brain is creating a vivid internal event. The more speculative view asks whether this vulnerable borderland could make a person sensitive to another mind. Whatever the answer, sleep paralysis shows how convincing a mental presence can feel when the ordinary boundary of waking breaks down. Meditation groups sometimes report shared images during silent practice. In group meditation, people sit together without speaking, yet afterward they may discover surprising overlaps in what they experienced. Several participants might describe the same color, shape, memory, or feeling of being drawn toward one idea. These moments can be explained in simple ways when the session has a theme, a teacher's guidance, or shared expectations. But reports become more intriguing when the overlap is unexpected and specific. Supporters of telepathy suggest that stillness may make minds more receptive to one another. When conversation stops and attention settles, subtle impressions could become easier to notice. Skeptics point to the power of suggestion, even when no one realizes it is operating. The setting itself can guide imagination. Yet the mystery remains inviting because the practice is not built for performance. People are not trying to impress a crowd. They are listening inward, and sometimes what they hear seems to be shared. Monks have described compassion as a force that crosses distance. In some contemplative traditions, compassion is not only an emotion. It is treated as a trained capacity that can be directed toward another being, even when that person is far away. This does not need to be framed as telepathy in the usual sense, but it raises a related question. Can a deliberate mental state affect another mind? Practitioners may spend years cultivating attention until goodwill becomes steady rather than passing. Some believe this inner discipline can touch others through means beyond normal contact. A skeptic might say, the main effect is on the person practicing. Compassion changes behavior, tone, and choices, which then influence the world in ordinary ways. Yet those who receive distant prayers or focused concern sometimes report comfort at the right moment. Maybe they are responding to chance. Maybe they are part of a deeper exchange. The mystery asks whether care can become more than intention when the mind is trained to hold it. Prayer chains raise questions about intention and unseen connection. A prayer chain can stretch across a town, a congregation, or an online community, with many people focusing on one person at the same time. To believers, this shared intention can become a real source of support. To skeptics, the benefits may come through comfort, messages, visits, and practical help. Both views can be true in part. The telepathy question begins when the person being prayed for reports a sudden sense of peace before they know anyone has gathered in thought for them. Such stories are difficult to test, but they are deeply meaningful to those who live them. Some people imagine intention as a kind of mental signal strengthened by repetition. Others see the effect as emotional coincidence shaped by hope. What makes prayer chains relevant is their structure. Many minds focus in one direction, without needing physical contact. Whether spiritual, psychological, or something stranger, the act suggests that attention may not be a small thing. Collective grief sometimes feels like a shared mental atmosphere. After a public loss or a local tragedy, people often describe the air between them as changed. Conversations slow. Strangers meet each other's eyes differently. A whole community seems to know something before details are spoken. Much of this is social perception. Humans read posture, silence, and behavior with incredible speed. Yet collective grief can also feel as if a heavy mood has settled over everyone at once. Some people believe large emotions create a field that sensitive minds can detect. Others see the effect as rapid social transmission through visible cues and shared knowledge. The mystery becomes stronger when people sense the mood, before they hear the news. They may enter a workplace, a street, or a home and feel that something has happened. It may be intuition built from subtle evidence. It may be pattern recognition. Or perhaps deep human emotion leaves traces that move through a group faster than words. Crowds can move as though one thought passes through them. Anyone who has watched a crowd knows how quickly a single impulse can spread. One person turns, then many turn. A cheer begins in one corner and seems to ignite everywhere. A moment of tension can pass through hundreds of bodies before anyone explains why. Science can describe this through imitation, attention, sound, and movement. Yet from the inside, it can feel like one shared mind briefly takes control. Telepathy enters as a tempting metaphor, and sometimes as a deeper claim. Some people think groups generate a collective awareness that individuals can tap into without realizing it. The ordinary explanation is already impressive. Humans are exquisitely responsive to social signals, especially when packed together. But the experience still challenges our sense of separateness. A crowd can know when to surge, pause, laugh, or grow uneasy. The mystery is whether this is only coordination or a glimpse of minds joining into something larger. Mass panic shows how fear spreads before facts are clear. Fear can outrun information. In a tense crowd, a sound, a gesture, or a rumor may trigger movement before anyone knows what is happening. The result can look almost telepathic because people react to a danger they cannot yet identify. Psychologists explain this through survival instincts. In uncertain conditions, copying others can be safer than waiting for proof. Still, mass panic reveals something unsettling about human connection. Emotion transfers quickly, sometimes faster than language. One person's alarm becomes another person's alarm, and the original cause can vanish inside the reaction. Some people see this as evidence that minds are linked through visible behavior alone. Others wonder whether fear has a direct contagious quality that travels beneath awareness. The subject must be handled carefully because real panic can cause harm. Yet as a mystery of perception, it is powerful. It shows that the boundary between my fear and your fear may be thinner than we like to think. Stage mentalists reveal how prediction can feel like mind reading. A skilled mentalist can make an audience believe a private thought has been discovered. They may predict a chosen word, identify a drawing, or reveal a number someone thinks they selected freely. The methods can include psychology, probability, suggestion, hidden preparation, and astonishing control of attention. What matters for telepathy is the feeling the performance creates. The spectator often experiences the result as personal and impossible. They know what they thought, and the performer seems to know it too. This shows how easily the mind can mistake guided choice for free choice. It also shows how much information leaks through behavior. A glance, hesitation, or emphasis may reveal more than the spectator intends. Yet mentalism does not destroy the wonder around telepathy. It sharpens the question. If illusion can imitate thought reading so convincingly, then any genuine claim must clear a very high bar. The mystery becomes a test of perception itself. Skilled magicians use observation to imitate impossible mental powers. Magicians are important to the telepathy story because they understand deception better than almost anyone. They know how attention can be directed, how memory can be shaped, and how confidence can be manufactured in plain sight. When a magician seems to read a mind, the secret may involve careful watching rather than psychic contact. People reveal choices through eye movement, hand tension, breathing, and the way they react to options. A performer can also narrow possibilities until the final revelation feels impossible. This does not mean every claim of telepathy is false. It means the human mind is surprisingly easy to guide without noticing. Some paranormal researchers have welcomed magicians as valuable critics because they spot weaknesses that scientists sometimes miss. The deeper fascination is that magic and telepathy both depend on the same fear. We are never fully sure how much of ourselves can be seen. The magician proves that hidden information is rarely as hidden as we think. Micro-expressions may explain some moments that seem deeply telepathic. A person can reveal a thought in less than a second. A flicker of fear, recognition, dislike, or surprise may cross the face before the conscious mind can control it. Trained observers sometimes notice these micro-expressions, but close friends and partners may sense them without naming what they saw. This can create the impression of telepathy. Someone says, "You knew what I was thinking," when the truth may be that their face spoke first. The explanation is ordinary, but not boring. It means human beings are constantly broadcasting small signals they do not intend to send. Some people are unusually good at receiving them. Yet there are cases where no visible cue seems available, which keeps the larger mystery open. Micro-expressions do not explain every strange connection, but they teach an important lesson. Before we look for invisible messages between minds, we must respect how much invisible meaning already passes across the face. Subtle body language can carry information below conscious awareness. A shoulder shift, a delayed breath, or a slight change in distance can tell a careful observer that a decision has already formed. Most of us do not consciously read these signals as separate facts. We receive them as a feeling. Something is wrong. Someone is interested. A person is about to speak. That feeling can seem like mind reading because the chain of perception is hidden from awareness. In close relationships, the effect grows stronger. People learn each other's timing so well that a tiny movement becomes enough to predict the next thought. Some people argue that many telepathy stories begin here. The body communicates before language does. Still, this does not make the mystery disappear. It makes the human system more remarkable. If unconscious perception can gather so much from slight movement, then our ordinary model of communication is incomplete. We may be exchanging far more information than we ever notice. Shared routines allow close friends to anticipate each other effortlessly. Friendship creates a private pattern over time. Two people learn what the other notices, avoids, desires, and worries about. After enough shared experience, one friend may answer before the other finishes speaking. They may choose the same restaurant, send a message at the same moment, or sense that a mood has shifted from only a few words. This can feel telepathic because the prediction happens faster than explanation. In reality, it may come from memory working at high speed. The brain has stored hundreds of small examples and turns them into a sudden knowing. Yet some friendships produce moments that feel more precise than habit should allow. A thought arrives, and the friend confirms it seconds later. Some people believe emotional closeness creates a low-level link that becomes stronger through trust. Skeptics say pattern recognition is enough. The mystery remains charming because friendship itself becomes the experiment, repeated day after day without anyone calling it research. Long marriages sometimes create an almost wordless private language. After many years together, married partners may communicate with a glance, a pause, or a tiny change in tone. Outsiders can miss the entire exchange, while both partners understand exactly what has passed between them. This is not necessarily supernatural. It is the result of thousands of shared moments turning into a living code. A look can mean, remember what happened last time. A breath can mean, not now. A silence can carry more detail than a sentence. Still, couples sometimes report something beyond this private language. One partner wakes because the other is restless in another room. One senses a decision forming before it has been spoken. Another feels an unexplained pull to call at exactly the right time. Some people believe lifelong intimacy allows minds to synchronize in subtle ways. Others see a magnificent example of learning and attention. Either explanation is moving, because it suggests that love can make communication almost invisible. Soldiers in small units often sense decisions before orders arrive. In a disciplined unit, people learn to read one another under pressure. A hand signal, a shift in posture, or a change in breathing can tell others what is about to happen. Veterans sometimes describe moments when the group seemed to move before any clear order was given. This can look like telepathy because the decision spreads instantly through trained bodies. The practical explanation is experience. Repeated drills and shared danger create powerful anticipation. Each person knows the likely next move because everyone has practiced it together. Yet combat stories sometimes include stranger claims, such as sensing a comrade's distress without seeing them or knowing when to stop before danger appears. These accounts are difficult to evaluate because memory under stress can become compressed and intense. Still, they matter. They show how extreme conditions may heighten perception. Whether through training, instinct, or something more mysterious, survival can make human awareness feel sharply connected. Sports teams sometimes move with timing that feels mentally linked. The best teams can appear to share one decision. A player passes to a space before the teammate arrives. A defender shifts early because the attack is already understood. A goalkeeper senses a shot before the foot has fully swung. Coaches explain this through practice, pattern recognition, and deep knowledge of the game. That explanation is strong. Elite athletes study each other's habits until the next move becomes almost visible before it happens. Yet from the outside, the timing can feel like mind-to-mind contact. The athletes do not have time to talk. They react inside fractions of a second. Some people think high performance creates temporary group consciousness, especially when trust is complete. Others see the brain predicting movement with extraordinary speed. The fascination lies in the border between skill and mystery. Teamwork shows that minds can align so closely that communication seems to happen before language could possibly arrive. Musicians improvising together can seem to share one hidden pulse. Improvised music offers one of the most beautiful examples of apparent mental connection. Players may change direction at the same instant, leave space for each other without planning it, or land together on an ending no one announced. Jazz musicians often describe listening so deeply that the group feels like a single organism. The ordinary explanation is demanding and impressive. They know harmony, rhythm, style, and each other's tendencies. They hear tiny cues in timing and volume. Yet the experience can still feel uncanny, especially when a new musical idea is answered immediately by another player. Some musicians speak of being in the flow, where conscious control seems to step aside. Alternative thinkers wonder whether creative minds can temporarily synchronize through attention and emotion. Skeptics call it mastery. Both views honor the phenomenon in different ways. Improvisation suggests that thought may not always move in words. Sometimes it travels through timing, expectation, and shared feeling. Twins separated at birth created legends about mirrored choices. Stories of separated twins have become legendary because they seem to test nature against environment in the most dramatic way. Two people grow up apart, then later discover matching habits, tastes, careers, or life decisions. Some cases have been carefully studied, while others have grown in the telling. Genetics explains part of the pattern. Inherited traits can influence personality, temperament, preferences, and even the kinds of environments people seek. But the most famous stories include details that feel almost theatrical, such as similar names, similar partners, or parallel routines. Skeptics warn that people remember matches more than differences, and media retellings often polish the coincidences. Still, the idea has enormous power. If two lives can echo each other without shared upbringing, perhaps the mind is guided by deeper patterns than we assume. For telepathy, the question becomes more daring. Are these parallels only biology, or can a connection exist between people who never knew each other? Adoption reunions sometimes reveal uncanny similarities across distant lives. When adoptees reunite with biological relatives, the discoveries can be emotionally overwhelming. Beyond physical resemblance, people sometimes find similar gestures, private habits, favorite foods, fears, or ways of speaking. Many of these parallels can be explained through inheritance. A family line may carry temperament and preference more strongly than expected. Yet the experience often feels stranger than genetics alone, because the details are personal. Someone who grew up far away may laugh the same way as a parent they never met. Another may have chosen a similar hobby or repeated a family pattern unknowingly. These reunions do not prove telepathy, but they complicate the idea of individuality. Some people wonder whether families are connected by more than DNA and memory. Others believe the true mystery is how much of the self is written before experience begins. Either way, reunion stories make distant lives feel quietly coordinated, as if hidden threads had been waiting to be noticed. Some families inherit stories of dreams that warn across generations. In certain families, warning dreams become part of the household record. A grandmother dreamed before a journey. A father sensed a problem before a call. A child later reports a similar experience and is told that this gift has appeared before. Such stories can be powerful because they give telepathy a lineage. The experience is not treated as random. It becomes a family pattern. Skeptics may point out that families pass down expectations along with stories. If children hear that warning dreams matter, they may notice and remember them more strongly. That is a reasonable explanation. Yet some families insist the events appeared before anyone taught the belief. The idea of inherited sensitivity appeals to people who suspect that psychic ability may run quietly through bloodlines. Others prefer to see it as shared emotional style. The mystery is not only whether the dreams come true. It is why some families preserve them like heirlooms with caution and awe. Childhood imaginary friends sometimes speak with strangely adult knowledge. Imaginary friends are usually understood as part of normal childhood creativity, and most are harmless companions invented by a growing mind. Yet some reports have a more puzzling edge. A child describes an unseen friend who uses mature language, mentions family details, or seems to know things the child was never told. Many explanations remain grounded. Children overhear more than adults realize. They absorb fragments from conversations, television, and emotional tension, then weave them into play. Memory can also make later retellings sound sharper than the original moment. But some families remember incidents that left them genuinely unsettled. The imaginary companion seemed less like invention and more like a source of information. Some people interpret this as spirit contact. Others see possible telepathy, with the child unconsciously drawing from adult minds nearby. The mystery is compelling because young children do not always separate imagination, memory, and perception in the ways adults expect. Their inner world may be more open than ours. Savants have raised questions about hidden channels of human knowing. Savant abilities challenge ordinary assumptions about the limits of the mind. Some people can calculate dates rapidly, reproduce complex music after hearing it once, or remember vast detail with astonishing precision. These abilities do not prove telepathy, but they reveal that human cognition can contain capacities far beyond everyday experience. When someone displays knowledge without the expected learning path, people naturally wonder what else might be hidden. The scientific explanation often involves unusual brain organization, intense focus, and remarkable memory systems. Still, the effect can feel almost like information arriving from somewhere else. Some alternative thinkers suggest savants may access deeper layers of mind that ordinary consciousness filters out. Cautious researchers avoid that leap, but they still acknowledge the mystery of how such abilities emerge. Telepathy belongs near this discussion because both subjects ask the same unsettling question. Is the normal human mind a complete system, or only a narrowed version of something much larger? Autism researchers have studied unusual communication claims with great caution. Claims about telepathy and autism must be handled carefully because real people can be harmed by exaggeration or careless hope. Some families have reported moments where an autistic person seemed to know thoughts, needs, or distant events without ordinary communication. Others have described deep emotional attunement that outsiders did not expect. Researchers approach such claims cautiously because communication differences can be misunderstood. A person may notice patterns, routines, sensory cues, or emotional shifts that others miss. They may also express understanding in ways that do not fit standard expectations. It is important not to turn autism into a mystical stereotype. Still, the subject raises genuine curiosity about how many forms of awareness humans possess. Some experiences that look paranormal may come from heightened perception rather than mind reading. Others remain personally mysterious to the families involved. The best approach is respect, caution, and openness to complexity. The mystery here is not spectacle. It is the hidden range of human communication. Non-verbal children sometimes appear to understand more than anyone expects. When a child does not speak, adults can make the terrible mistake of assuming they do not understand. Many families have learned the opposite. A child who says little or nothing may respond to emotional changes, household conversations, or unspoken tension with surprising accuracy. Sometimes, when a communication method becomes available, the child reveals knowledge that had been present for years. This can feel almost telepathic to those around them, because the child seemed to know without being told directly. In reality, understanding may have been there all along, trapped behind limited expression. That explanation is powerful and humane. Yet some parents still describe moments that seem to go beyond observation, as if the child sensed a private worry or decision. The mystery should never reduce the child to a paranormal object. It should deepen respect. Human awareness can exist behind silence, and silence is not proof that no message is being received. Brain-to-brain experiments now send simple signals through technology. Modern technology has begun to create a version of telepathy that earlier generations could only imagine. In some experiments, one person's brain activity is recorded, translated by a computer, and used to send a simple signal to another person. The message is not a flowing thought. It may be a basic choice, a flash of perception, or a command inside a tightly controlled setup. Still, the principle is astonishing. Information from one nervous system can influence another without speech, writing, or ordinary gesture. This is not mystical telepathy, but it changes the meaning of the word. A future built from brain interfaces could make silent communication practical, measurable, and repeatable. Some people see this as proof that old legends were pointing toward a real possibility by the wrong route. Others see a completely separate technological achievement. Either way, the result is dramatic. The dream of mind-to-mind contact has moved from seance rooms into engineering labs. Neural interfaces make old telepathy legends feel newly possible. A neural interface can read patterns from the brain and connect them to machines. At first, this sounds medical or technical rather than mysterious. But once a thought pattern can move a cursor, select a letter, or control a device, the old idea of silent intention becomes newly concrete. The mind is no longer only private. It can be translated. That does not mean anyone can read full thoughts, and the limits are still significant. Yet the direction is clear enough to feel startling. Abilities once described in supernatural language may eventually arrive through sensors, implants, and software. Some people imagine future conversations where words are not spoken but transmitted as encoded intention. Others worry about privacy because the inner life could become a new frontier for technology. Telepathy legends asked whether thought could leave the body. Neural interfaces show that, under certain conditions, intention already can. The mystery is becoming less impossible and more practical. Artificial intelligence may one day translate thought patterns into messages. Artificial intelligence is changing the telepathy question because it can find patterns too complex for human observers to decode easily. Brain activity is messy, but machines can be trained to connect certain patterns with images, words, intentions, or choices. Today, such systems remain limited and dependent on careful conditions. They do not freely read a person's private mind. But the progress raises a strange future possibility. A person might think a message, and software might turn that activity into language. For people who cannot speak, that could be life-changing. For society, it raises deeper questions about privacy, consent, and the meaning of inner space. Some alternative thinkers see this as technology catching up with an ancient human capacity. Skeptics see no need for that interpretation because machines are doing the work. Yet the emotional impact is similar. The silent thought, once unreachable, begins to approach the outside world. That is a profound shift. Scientists have already decoded rough images from brain activity. One of the most mind-bending developments in neuroscience is the attempt to reconstruct what a person is seeing or imagining from brain signals. The results are not perfect pictures, and they require training data, complex analysis, and controlled conditions. Even so, rough visual reconstructions have been produced from patterns and activity. This matters for telepathy because it shows that private experience leaves a readable trace. A picture in the mind is not pure vapor. It corresponds to physical patterns that can, at least partly, be interpreted. Some people see this as the first step toward artificial mind reading. Others warn that the phrase makes the technology sound more advanced than it is. Both points matter. The achievement is limited, but the concept is enormous. For centuries, telepathy was imagined as one mind directly receiving another's image. Now, machines are beginning to reveal how an inner image might become visible, not by magic, but by decoding. Silent speech research could turn imagined words into communication. Many people think in words without saying them aloud. Silent speech research explores whether those imagined words can be detected and transformed into usable communication. Some systems measure brain activity. Others study tiny muscle signals linked to the act of preparing speech. The result could allow someone to compose messages without moving their mouth. This is especially important for people who have lost the ability to speak. But it also touches the old telepathic dream. A sentence could move from inner thought to another person's screen without sound. The process is technological, not paranormal, and it usually requires equipment, training, and consent. Still, the experience may feel like controlled mind transmission. Some people find this thrilling. Others find it unsettling because inner language feels deeply private. The mystery is no longer only whether thoughts can travel. It is whether humans are ready for a world where the boundary between thinking and sending becomes thinner. Brain implants allow paralyzed people to control cursors by intention. Brain implants have produced some of the most moving examples of intention leaving the body in a new way. A person who cannot move a limb may learn to guide a cursor, select letters, or operate a robotic device by using neural signals. The achievement is not telepathy in the supernatural sense, but it is still astonishing. The thought to move becomes data. The data becomes action. For someone trapped behind paralysis, that pathway can restore a measure of independence and expression. It also forces everyone else to rethink the boundary of the self. If intention can control a machine, then the mind's reach can be extended through technology. Some people connect this to old psychic claims, seeing a practical version of influence at a distance. Scientists frame it as decoding motor intention. Both descriptions point to the same wonder. The human will, once confined by an injured body, can find another route into the world. Scientists have already decoded rough images from brain activity. The private picture inside a person's mind once seemed completely unreachable. Now, brain imaging has begun to change that assumption. In controlled experiments, people look at images, while machines record patterns of activity, and computer systems learn how those patterns relate to what is being seen. The reconstructions are not perfect. They can look blurred, incomplete, or dreamlike. Yet the principle is astonishing because an inner visual experience leaves enough trace for a machine to make a rough version of it. That does not prove natural telepathy, but it moves the old question into a new arena. If a computer can begin to translate a mental image, then thought is not sealed away in the way people once imagined. Some see this as the first step toward artificial mind reading. Others warn that the science is still limited. Either way, the idea that experience can be partly decoded is difficult to forget. Silent speech research could turn imagined words into communication. A sentence can form inside the mind before the mouth ever moves. For most of history, that sentence remained invisible unless someone chose to speak or write it. Silent speech research asks whether imagined words can be detected through brain signals or tiny muscle activity linked to speech preparation. The goal is not fantasy. It could help people who cannot talk communicate again. Yet the larger implication feels almost supernatural. A person might think words, and a system might translate them into text without ordinary sound. This would not be classic telepathy, because technology stands in the middle. But to the person receiving the message, it may feel close to thought transfer. Some people find the possibility liberating. Others find it unsettling because inner language feels like one of the last private rooms we possess. The mystery is no longer only whether minds can connect. It is how much connection we would actually welcome. Brain implants allow paralyzed people to control cursors by intention. Few modern developments feel more moving than a person guiding a machine through thought alone. In brain-computer interface research, implanted sensors can detect patterns connected to intended movement. A person may imagine moving a hand, and that signal can help control a cursor or select letters on a screen. The achievement is practical, careful, and deeply human. It gives communication back to people whose bodies may no longer obey them in familiar ways. But it also transforms the old language of mind power. Intention leaves the body and acts through a device. A private command becomes visible in the world. This is not paranormal telepathy, yet it proves that thought can be translated into action beyond muscle. Some futurists imagine these systems becoming faster and more natural until they feel like direct mental speech. The mystery here is not whether the effect is real. It is where such technology may lead once thought becomes interface. Future devices may blur telepathy and technology beyond recognition. Imagine a world where speaking is no longer the fastest way to share an idea. A small device reads intended words, another receives them, and the exchange happens before a sentence is spoken aloud. That future may sound extreme, but it follows from work already happening around brain signals, artificial intelligence, and neural interfaces. The result would raise a strange question. Would this be communication, or a manufactured form of telepathy? The difference might matter less to the people using it. A silent message could pass from one person to another with no visible gesture. For medicine, this could be extraordinary. For privacy, it could become unsettling. Some people dream of deeper connection. Others fear a future where the mind becomes a data source. The ancient fantasy of thought transfer may arrive not through hidden powers, but through tools we build ourselves. The mystery is whether technology will reveal the mind or invade it. Quantum theories of consciousness attract bold claims about distant minds. Quantum physics is often pulled into the telepathy debate because it already sounds strange to ordinary intuition. Particles can behave in ways that challenge familiar ideas about distance, certainty, and observation. Some people take this as a doorway into claims about consciousness. They wonder whether minds might be linked through deep features of reality that science has not yet connected to thought. The mainstream view is cautious, and for good reason. The strange behavior of particles does not automatically explain human experiences. A leap from physics to mind reading can become speculation very quickly. Yet the attraction is easy to understand. Telepathy seems to require some hidden bridge, and quantum language offers a modern-sounding bridge. Alternative thinkers see possibility. Skeptics see misused terminology. The fascination lies in the tension between them. If consciousness ever proves to have unexpected physical depth, the story of mind-to-mind contact could change completely. Mainstream science remains cautious about linking quantum physics to telepathy. The caution around this subject is not simply closed-mindedness. Quantum physics is a precise field, and telepathy is a disputed human experience. Connecting them requires more than a shared feeling of strangeness. Scientists ask for mechanisms, repeatable results, and predictions that can be tested. Without those, quantum explanations can become a kind of mystery label placed over anything difficult. That does not mean every unusual mental report is worthless. It means the explanation must be as serious as the claim. This is where the debate becomes useful. Believers often argue that current models of mind are incomplete. Skeptics respond that incomplete knowledge does not justify any conclusion we prefer. Both positions keep the question alive in different ways. The careful approach may feel less thrilling, but it protects the mystery from easy answers. If telepathy is ever explained through physics, the evidence will need to be strong enough to survive the most disciplined doubt. Some fringe thinkers imagine thoughts entangled beyond space and time. The idea is bold. Two minds may become linked in a way that does not depend on ordinary distance, and a thought in one place may somehow correspond with a feeling in another. People who favor this view often point to deep emotional bonds, sudden knowing, and meaningful timing that seems too exact for chance. They borrow the word entanglement because it suggests connection without a visible signal. Strict scientists object because quantum entanglement has a specific meaning, and using it loosely can create confusion. Still, the image has power because it gives language to an experience many people have felt. A loved one is far away, yet something about them arrives inwardly. A decision forms, and another person seems to sense it. Whether this is physics, psychology, or symbolic thinking remains unresolved. The fringe version may go too far, but it preserves a haunting possibility. Perhaps distance is not the whole story. The placebo effect shows belief can change the body profoundly. The placebo effect is not telepathy, but it proves something essential about the mind. Belief can influence pain, expectation, stress, and even measurable responses in the body. A person may feel better because they trust a treatment, even when the treatment itself has no active ingredient. This is not fake healing. It is the body responding to meaning, context, and expectation. For telepathy, the lesson is important because it shows that thoughts are not weak things. They can shape physical experience in ways that are still being studied. Some people take this further and ask whether one person's focused belief could influence another person at a distance. That claim remains uncertain, but it grows from a real foundation. The mind and body are more connected than old assumptions allowed. The placebo effect does not prove that thoughts travel between people. It does prove that inner conviction can produce outer consequences, and that is already remarkable. Mirror neurons suggest human minds may echo each other naturally. When a person watches someone reach, smile, wince, or struggle, parts of their own brain may respond as though they are simulating the action. This discovery has often been linked to empathy, learning, and social understanding. It does not mean we literally read minds, but it does suggest that human beings are built to internally echo one another. That echo can make another person's feelings seem present inside us before we have reasoned it out. A friend looks tired, and we feel a trace of that heaviness. Someone speaks with hidden fear, and our body registers it first. Telepathy becomes less distant from ordinary life when seen this way. Maybe some experiences called psychic are extreme versions of normal resonance. Some people go further and imagine mirror systems as hints of a shared mental field. The cautious view stays with biology. Yet the wonder remains because empathy itself begins to look like a quiet form of contact. Empathy sometimes feels like receiving emotions rather than interpreting them. There are moments when another person's feeling seems to arrive before any clear sign explains it. You enter a room and sense tension. You speak to a friend and suddenly feel their sadness before they name it. This can come from tiny clues in expression, voice, posture, and timing. The body notices what the conscious mind has not yet organized. But empathy can still feel strangely direct. Highly sensitive people often describe emotions as something they absorb rather than observe. Some spiritual traditions treat this as a real exchange of energy between people. Psychology describes attunement, nervous system response, and learned emotional reading. The two explanations may describe different layers of the same experience. Telepathy becomes interesting here because emotion may be easier to transmit than detailed words. A feeling is broad, immediate, and powerful. If any mental content can cross a boundary, many people suspect it would begin with emotion. Déjà vu can resemble a message arriving before the moment. Déjà vu is usually brief, but it can be intensely convincing. A person enters a situation and feels that it has already happened, even when they know it has not. Science offers explanations involving memory processing, recognition errors, and the brain briefly mislabeling the present as familiar. Those explanations are valuable, yet the experience still feels mysterious from the inside. It can seem as though the mind received a preview, then met the moment later. Some people connect this to telepathy across time rather than distance. They wonder whether a future version of the self or another mind connected to the event somehow sends a trace backward. That idea sits far outside mainstream certainty, but it captures the emotional force of the experience. Déjà vu matters because it disrupts time in ordinary life. For a second, the mind feels ahead of itself, and the present seems to carry an echo from somewhere it should not. Premonitions often begin as thoughts that feel oddly external. A premonition rarely arrives with proof attached. It may begin as a sudden idea, a pressure to change plans, or a mental image that does not feel self-generated. Many people ignore these impressions because they seem irrational. Then, if an event follows, the memory becomes charged. Skeptics are right to note that most stray thoughts do not come true. We remember the hits and forget the misses. Yet some premonition accounts remain hard for witnesses to dismiss because the feeling was unusually distinct before anything happened. It seemed to arrive from outside ordinary thinking. Telepathy could be one possible interpretation when the later event involves another person. Perhaps the distress, decision, or intention was sensed before it was known. Another explanation is prediction. The mind may detect subtle patterns and present its conclusion as a warning. The mystery is that both possibilities feel plausible in certain cases, and neither removes the strangeness entirely. Synchronicities make some people suspect minds participate in hidden patterns. A synchronicity is not just a coincidence that happens to be amusing. It feels meaningful. A person thinks of a symbol, then it appears repeatedly. They mention someone from long ago, then that person unexpectedly contacts them. A private concern seems to be answered by an event outside the self. These experiences do not prove telepathy, but they make people question the boundaries between mind and world. One explanation is attention. Once something matters to us, we notice it more often. Another is probability. Unlikely matches are bound to occur in a life filled with countless thoughts and events. Yet synchronicities can feel too personally arranged to dismiss emotionally. Some people believe minds may interact with a deeper order of meaning. Others see the brain finding pattern in randomness. The fascination lies in the feeling of participation. For a moment, reality seems to know what we are thinking, and telepathy becomes part of a wider puzzle. Shared hallucinations raise difficult questions about perception and suggestion. When more than one person reports seeing or sensing the same unusual thing, the mystery becomes more complicated. A private hallucination can be explained inside one mind. A shared experience raises questions about communication between minds, group expectation, or environmental influence. Sometimes people in emotional settings reinforce one another without realizing it. One person reacts, another interprets that reaction, and soon a common story forms. That can create a powerful illusion of shared perception. But some accounts claim simultaneous details that are harder to reduce to social feedback. Telepathy enters as one possible explanation. Maybe one person's inner image influences another person's perception. Or maybe both minds respond to the same hidden cue. The subject sits at a crossroads between psychology and the paranormal. It asks whether perception belongs only to the individual, or whether groups can shape what each member experiences. That possibility is unsettling because it makes reality feel less private and less fixed. Folklore often treats telepathy as the language of spirits. In old stories, spirits rarely need ordinary speech. They send dreams, warnings, impressions, and sudden knowledge. A person knows not to enter a place. A family senses that the dead are near. A traveler feels guided away from danger. These tales can be read as superstition, but they also preserve a very old idea about communication. The unseen world speaks directly to the mind. Telepathy, in this frame, is not a human power alone. It is the method by which invisible beings make themselves known. Modern explanations may point to intuition, grief, fear, and pattern-seeking. Yet folklore matters because it records what people found memorable across generations. The details change, but the form remains familiar. a message arrives without a messenger. A thought feels planted. An emotion carries meaning. Whether these stories describe spirits or human minds interpreting the unknown, they show that silent communication has always belonged to mystery. Fairy traditions describe silent bargains made without spoken words. Fairy lore often treats thought, intention, and consent as powerful forces. In many stories, a person does not need to sign a document or speak a full promise. A wish, a glance, or an inward agreement may be enough to bind them. This is not telepathy in a laboratory sense, but it reveals an old belief that unseen beings can understand human desire directly. The fairy does not ask for a clear explanation. It seems to know what the person wants, sometimes better than the person does. That makes the stories unsettling. They suggest that private wishes may not be private in the presence of the other world. Some people interpret these tales as warnings about temptation and careless longing. Others see them as echoes of a worldview where thought itself has force. The mystery is not whether fairies exist in the literal sense. It is why so many traditions imagined hidden intelligences responding to unspoken human intention. Witch trial records sometimes included claims of thoughts sent remotely. Historical witch trials contain many accusations that modern readers view with caution and sadness. Fear, politics, rumor, and social pressure often shaped those events. Yet the records also reveal how strongly people once believed in remote mental influence. Accusers sometimes claimed that a person could send harm, temptation, or disturbing impressions without being physically present. We should not treat such claims as evidence against the accused. They often reflected panic and misunderstanding. But they are important for the history of telepathy because they show how older societies imagined thought as active at a distance. A hostile intention was not merely private. It was believed capable of crossing space and affecting another person. Modern psychology might explain this through anxiety, suggestion, and the power of belief. Still, the idea survives in new forms today, whenever people speak of bad energy, psychic attack, or mental influence. The old fear has changed its language, but not entirely vanished. Vampire legends gave supernatural power to gaze and mental command. The vampire is not only a creature of teeth and shadow in popular imagination. It is often a figure of influence. In many versions, the vampire can hold a victim with a stare, cloud judgment, or call someone from a distance. That power matters because it turns telepathy into domination. The mind is not gently contacted. It is entered, persuaded, or subdued. Modern readers may understand these stories as symbols of fear, desire, and manipulation. Yet their structure reveals a persistent anxiety. What if another will could reach inside us and bend our choices? The gaze becomes a carrier of command, almost like a visible line between minds. Some people connect this to hypnosis, charisma, and the real effects of intense attention. Others keep the supernatural reading. Either way, vampire lore shows the darker side of mind to mind connection. Telepathy is not always imagined as comfort. Sometimes it is imagined as control. Alien contact stories often describe messages placed directly into consciousness. Many reports of alleged contact with non-human beings include a striking detail. The message is not heard through ears. It appears directly in the mind. Witnesses may describe receiving instructions, images, or emotional understanding without spoken language. Skeptics interpret these accounts through dreams, altered states, sleep paralysis, cultural influence, or memory distortion. Those explanations deserve attention. Yet the consistency of telepathic communication inside contact stories is fascinating. If a truly advanced intelligence wanted to communicate across species, direct mental transfer would solve the problem of language. That possibility has fueled countless theories. Some people imagine extraterrestrials using technology so advanced it feels psychic. Others believe consciousness itself may be the common medium between beings. The subject remains unproven, but it is powerful because it links telepathy to the biggest question of all. If we are not alone, perhaps the first message would not come by radio. It might arrive as a thought we know is not ours. UFO witnesses sometimes report instructions received without audible sound. A witness sees an unusual object, then feels a clear instruction. Stop the car. Do not be afraid. Watch the sky. Leave this place. The words may not sound like a voice, yet they carry the force of communication. These reports sit in a strange corner of the UFO mystery because they move the event from sight into consciousness. A skeptic may see stress, expectation, or the brain trying to organize a confusing experience. A believer may see direct contact from an intelligence that does not need sound. The most intriguing accounts involve calm instructions rather than dramatic speeches. They feel simple, practical, and immediate. That restraint can make them more unsettling. Why would an unknown presence communicate only what was necessary? Some people suspect advanced technology could stimulate perception directly. Others think the witness is interpreting intuition as a message. The unanswered question remains. During a close encounter, where does the observation end and contact begin? Contactee accounts turned telepathy into a cosmic language of visitors. In the 20th century, contactee stories introduced a new version of telepathy to popular culture. Alleged visitors from beyond Earth often communicated through pure thought, bypassing translation completely. The messages usually concerned human destiny, spiritual growth, or warnings about destructive choices. Skeptics saw wishful thinking, performance, and the influence of the era's hopes and fears. Believers saw a pattern too meaningful to ignore. Telepathy was central because it made alien contact feel advanced and intimate at the same time. A spacecraft could be technological, but a mind message felt spiritual. This combination shaped the modern imagination of extraterrestrials as beings who had mastered both machines and consciousness. Some accounts were clearly unreliable. Others became part of a larger mythology that still influences UFO discussions today. The importance is cultural as much as paranormal. Contactee narratives helped make telepathy seem like the natural language of higher intelligence, whether that intelligence was real, imagined, or symbolic. Crop circle theories sometimes include minds guided by unknown intelligence. Crop circles are usually debated as physical formations, but some theories focus on the mental experiences of the people who study or create them. There are claims of sudden impulses to visit a field, dreams of designs before they appear, or feelings of being guided toward a pattern. Skeptics point to human artistry, planning, and the long history of confessed hoaxes. Those explanations cover many cases. Yet the more speculative side asks why certain formations seem to generate powerful reactions in witnesses. Some people feel that the geometry carries a message directed not only to the eye, but to the mind. Others imagine an unknown intelligence using symbols as a form of indirect telepathy. The field becomes a page, and consciousness becomes the reader. Whether one accepts that or not, the idea is captivating. It turns the crop circle mystery from a question of who made the marks into a question of who received them. Ancient astronaut writers connect sacred revelation with non-human thought contact. Some alternative interpretations of ancient history suggest that stories of gods, angels, and sky beings may describe encounters with advanced visitors. Within that framework, telepathy becomes a possible explanation for revelation. A prophet receives knowledge. A priest hears a command. A visionary sees symbols that reshape a culture. Mainstream historians generally understand these accounts through religion, politics, psychology, and literary tradition. But ancient astronaut writers ask a different question. What if some experiences described as divine communication were encounters with minds beyond Earth? This idea is highly speculative, but it has enormous storytelling power because it links telepathy to civilization itself. Sacred knowledge is no longer only spiritual. It becomes possible contact. The danger is oversimplifying complex cultures, so the idea must be handled with care. Yet the mystery remains provocative. Human history contains many claims of messages from above. The question is whether above always meant heaven, or sometimes something stranger. Conspiracy researchers suspect secret programs continued beyond public records. Whenever official psychic research is acknowledged and then closed, a new suspicion begins. Did the work truly stop, or did it move into deeper secrecy? This question appears often around telepathy, remote viewing, and related subjects. Public documents may show limited results, budget disputes, and program endings. Conspiracy-minded researchers see something else. They argue that any useful mental technology would be too valuable to abandon publicly. A government might deny success while keeping the strongest methods hidden. Skeptics counter that secrecy can make failure look mysterious, and that classified settings do not turn weak evidence into strong evidence. Still, the suspicion is understandable, because intelligence agencies have tested unusual ideas before. The public rarely sees the full story in real time. Telepathy becomes a perfect subject for this kind of doubt. If the experiment failed, the silence means nothing. If they worked even slightly, silence might be exactly what we should expect. Some believe elite groups studied telepathy for influence and surveillance. The more unsettling version of telepathy is not communication between loved ones. It is influence. Some conspiracy narratives claim that powerful groups have explored mental techniques for persuasion, monitoring, or social control. The idea draws strength from real concerns about propaganda, behavioral science, advertising, and surveillance technology. None of those require paranormal powers to be effective. Yet the telepathy angle adds a deeper fear. What if privacy can be breached not only through devices, but through the mind itself? Serious evidence for such claims is lacking, and the subject can easily drift into fantasy. But as a cultural mystery, it reveals something important. People sense that attention has become a battleground. Companies and governments already compete to shape thought through ordinary means. Telepathy becomes an extreme symbol of that anxiety. Whether hidden psychic programs exist or not, the fear behind the claim is real. The last private frontier may be the inner life. Psychic spies became a lasting symbol of hidden government experiments. The phrase, psychic spy, still has a strange power because it combines two worlds that should not fit together. One belongs to classified operations, secret maps, and national security. The other belongs to intuition, visions, and the disputed edges of the mind. During the era of official psychic research, remote viewing became the most famous example. But the public imagination often blended it with telepathy, imagining operatives who could send thoughts, sense targets, or gather information beyond normal channels. The actual record is debated, and claims of success remain controversial. Yet the symbol endured because it suggests that governments may take strange possibilities seriously before the public is allowed to. A psychic spy does not need to be fully proven to be fascinating. The idea itself changes the mood of the mystery. It asks whether the human mind was ever treated as an intelligence tool, and whether any part of that story remains hidden. Skeptics argue telepathy survives because the human mind seeks patterns. The skeptical case is stronger than many believers admit. Human beings are pattern makers. We connect events, remember striking coincidences, and forget the countless moments when nothing unusual happened. A thought of a friend followed by a message feels amazing. All the thoughts that led nowhere disappear from memory. Add emotion, selective recall, and the desire for meaning, and telepathy can seem more common than chance allows. Skeptics also point to weak experimental results, sensory leakage, fraud, and generous interpretation of vague hits. This view does not require people to be dishonest. It says the mind is built to find connections because connection helps us survive. Yet even skepticism has an interesting side. If our brains are so hungry for hidden links, why does this particular idea feel so natural across cultures? Maybe telepathy persists because it is an illusion. Or maybe the illusion is so persistent because it resembles something real at the edge of perception. Believers argue coincidence cannot explain every impossible mental connection. Those who take telepathy seriously often begin with one event they cannot forget. It may be a warning, a shared dream, a sudden certainty, or a message that arrived at exactly the right moment. Skeptical explanations can cover many experiences, but believers argue that some cases are too specific, too well-timed, or too emotionally exact to dismiss. They do not claim every strange feeling is psychic. Instead, they point to the rare moments that seem to survive ordinary explanations. The strength of this position comes from lived experience. A person may not have a laboratory result, but they have a memory that changed their view of reality. Critics say personal certainty is not proof. Believers answer that proof may be difficult when the phenomenon is subtle and unpredictable. The debate continues because both sides hold something important. Coincidence is real. So is the human sense that some connections feel different from coincidence. The evidence remains disputed because extraordinary moments rarely repeat on command. Telepathy has a stubborn testing problem. The most compelling stories often happen once, under emotional pressure and without warning. A person senses danger, receives a dream, or knows who is calling. Then, when asked to repeat the ability in a controlled setting, nothing happens. Skeptics see this as a major weakness. If a power cannot be demonstrated reliably, science has little reason to accept it. Believers respond that rare human experiences do not always obey laboratory schedules. Love, fear, crisis, and deep focus may be part of the conditions, and those cannot be manufactured easily without changing the event. This creates a frustrating gap between testimony and proof. The better the controls become, the more delicate the claimed effect may appear. The more natural the event feels, the harder it is to verify. That is why the mystery endures. Telepathy sits between the unforgettable personal moment and the repeatable public demonstration. Telepathy endures because everyone has felt a thought arrive mysteriously. Almost everyone knows the feeling. A name appears for no reason. A memory stirs just before a message arrives. A person feels suddenly present in the mind, although they are nowhere nearby. Most of these moments may have ordinary explanations. Chance, habit, and hidden perception can account for a great deal. Yet the experience remains powerful because it feels different from deliberate thinking. The thought seems to come toward us. It has a sense of arrival. That small inner event is why telepathy never fully disappears, no matter how skeptical the age becomes. It does not belong only to laboratories, folklore, or conspiracy files. It belongs to daily life. People may doubt the theory while still remembering the moment. The mystery survives because it touches a question that is both simple and enormous. Are we completely separate minds moving through the world, or are we sometimes connected in ways we have barely begun to understand? And so, We come to the edge of tonight's mystery. We have followed telepathy through the familiar and the extraordinary. We began with the simple feeling that a thought can arrive before a message does. We moved through twins, families, dreams, animals, old experiments, and government rooms where impossible questions were taken more seriously than most people realize. We wandered into seances, trance states, stage acts, and private stories that still resist neat explanation. We looked at the skeptical answers too, because coincidence, suggestion, body language, and memory can create powerful illusions. Yet even after those explanations are considered, the subject does not quite fade away. It remains there, at the edge of experience, asking whether the mind is more open than it seems. Then the mystery changed shape. What once belonged to folklore and strange testimony began to meet modern technology. Brain signals became messages. Silent intention began to move machines. Rough images inside the mind became something a computer could partly rebuild. The old dream of thought transfer did not vanish. It stepped into laboratories, wires, screens, and future questions about privacy and connection. And beyond that, we entered the stranger territory. Stories of spirits, fairies, vampires, psychic spies, hidden programs, and visitors from the sky all return to one haunting idea. A message does not always need a voice. Sometimes in these accounts, knowledge appears directly in the mind. Sometimes it feels like warning. Sometimes it feels like contact. Sometimes it feels like influence from somewhere beyond the usual map. Perhaps telepathy is only a name we give to coincidence when it touches the heart. Perhaps it is a natural skill that flickers in rare moments, then disappears when we try to catch it. Or perhaps the truth is somewhere between those answers. Human beings are always sending signals. We speak with our faces, our silences, our choices, and the small changes we do not notice in ourselves. But there are still moments that feel stranger than that. A name at the right second. A dream that matches the morning. A call that seems to answer a thought. For now, we do not need to solve it. We can simply let the question rest beside us. So allow the mystery to grow quiet now. Let the mind loosen its hold on every unanswered thread. Let the stories drift back into the dark, one by one, until only the feeling of curiosity remains. Your breathing can slow. Your shoulders can soften. The day can fall away. If you enjoyed this curious journey, you are welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps more sleepy souls find their way here. And if you happen to still be awake, there should be another mystery waiting on the screen for you. But for now, there is nothing else you need to follow. Let the room settle. Let your thoughts become light. Let the unknown stay unknown. Sleep well, and good night.